Hello, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully you can see my shared screen.
We can.
Okay, that's good.
In the room.
For those of you who may not know me, my name is Pete Meechan. I work for a company called Orb Data. I've been working with IWS for quite a while, probably more years than I care to remember, 20 odd years at least. We've worked across all sorts of different industries, pretty much covered most things that IWS can get up to. It still amazes me to this day how different customers use the product in such different ways, although essentially they're all pretty much doing the same sort of thing. The reason I wanted to talk a little bit about file transfer is that today, certainly with the customers I'm working with anyway, file transfer remains something that is quite a business critical process. And a lot of the customers I'm working with over the last 12, 18 months, 2 years or so, seem to continuously have problems with file transfer. And when I've spoken to them about it and when I've walked through some of the issues, it seems to boil down to primarily an issue of visibility. The fact that they have a third-party file transfer solution, which is generally supplying or sending files that are required by the IWS workloads. And if something should go wrong, typically issues with network connections or space issues on the file transfer systems that result in those files not being available, it ultimately impacts the IWS workloads that are dependent upon those files. Another issue that seems to crop up quite a lot is if they are expecting files from maybe a third-party supplier or such like, and generally they don't give them an exact time saying that this file will be there 9 o'clock Monday morning. It's usually it'll be there around 9 o'clock Monday morning. So how long do they actually wait before that file arrives before they can take some sort of action to find out why it hasn't arrived? So when you look at these issues, if you're looking at a small number of files, they tend to be fairly simple to manage. But as the number of files increase, then the problems that can arise with the increased number of files can have a major impact. When I think back to a project I worked on quite a few years ago, well before the days of dynamic agents and the built-in file transfer capability that IWS has today, I worked for one big multinational company on a HR project, and they were dealing with literally hundreds of files at the end of the month. And to try and manage those files was an extremely difficult problem for them. So much so that we actually developed an extended agent that integrated with their file transfer solution. And that brought some visibility and some basic functionality into what was then TWS 8.5, even 8.6 possibly. So when I read about file transfer integration into IWS, I thought that's great, that's long overdue. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about today is some of the benefits of taking advantage of that integration. Certainly having the visibility and the control in a single place makes a huge difference to how you can deal with the problems I've just mentioned, like files not arriving or errors during the file transfer, etc. The fact that you can see what's happening and make problem determination much easier, because from one single interface you can have a look at the job log to see what went wrong with the job, find out why the file transfer failed and things like this. One of the customers that I work with particularly, they have lots of problems where they have to log into individual systems to go and look at log files for the file transfer agent to determine what the cause of the problem is. And all of that obviously leads to delays in problem determination and problem resolution. So one of the things, or some of the major benefits that I see of having or making use of the integrated file transfer capability within IWS is mainly the single point of visibility and control The fact that you can see everything that's happening on that from that one console is a huge benefit in the management of these file transfer processes. Second thing is that you can raise alerts, because once you can see the files, once you can see the jobs that are dealing with the files, you can then raise alerts through your event rules and your integration into raising tickets with ServiceNow and such like, all the other benefits of the integration, the additional integration that IWS gives you. I already mentioned simplified troubleshooting for errors. It's so simple to just click on the job log and see what's gone wrong with the job. Or if it's an individual file transfer, you can look at the individual file and see what's happened to that particular file, why it's failed. Once you have that visibility, again, you can then start adding dependencies, triggering other jobs, etc., far simpler than if you have to rely upon a file that may or may not have arrived from a third-party file transfer solution. And as I mentioned, triggering event rules to do things like raising tickets for problems, etc. The initial file transfer integration, while it was, in my opinion, very welcome, one of the things that it did lack was a bit of an overview. And thankfully, IWS now supplied a dashboard that allows you to look at the status of all the file transfers outstanding in your IWS environment. This is a sample from my test system. We'll have a look at it in real life in a moment. I'll do a small demo just to show you a bit more about how it all works. But the fact that this will give you the ability to see where all of your file transfers are and what state they're in on a single screen, gets automatically refreshed, so it keeps up to date with the plan as your plan's moving forward and continue with its processing. Each of the widgets can be drilled down on. You can just click on them and it'll drill down, automatically filter to file transfers that are in error or file transfers that are still waiting, etc. The only thing you have to remember is it doesn't get installed automatically. So you have to go to the Automation Hub and install the dashboard from there. It's fairly simple to do. Once it's done, then you'll get access to this dashboard. We'll have a look at this in the demo in a few moments. Another thing that is quite useful is that whilst the integrated file transfer capability is maybe not the all singing, all dancing, I do everything type solution that you may get with some of the third-party file transfer solutions, it does provide the basics that you need for most of the file transfer issues that you may encounter, all again from that single console. The fact that you can drill down into the workflow of a particular file transfer and see the status of each individual file that's being transferred. You can selectively restart individual file transfers or pause individual file transfers, or you can restart all of them in a single command, single option. You also have very useful options like here at the bottom, a single click will bring up the job log. So you can actually see if there's something going on in the job log that you're unaware of. This all simplifies the problem resolution, the problem diagnosis and the problem resolution, which to me is a huge benefit. Another option, which a lot of people may not be aware of, is that when you use the integrated file transfer, one of the things that happens is the file transfer job that's been defined, the job properties are updated with information related to each of the files that have been transferred. And in this example, I've just looked at the properties after a successful file transfer. And you can see here that there are a number of, under the extra properties option, you can see that there are file 0.attributes and file 1.attributes. And each of those attributes can be used and propagated automatically to subsequent jobs within the same job stream. They can either be passed directly into the subsequent job, or you can use the job prop command to pass them from one job to another. And this helps to avoid the need to create lots of small scripts that are maybe doing the similar thing. For example, you could pass the transferred file name directly to decryption jobs. A lot of file transfers that people deal with have date and timestamps within them, and therefore they're not always obvious what the name needs to be in order to create a simple script that might do a decryption or a decompression of the file that you've received, etc. So using the job properties is a very simple way of making that available to subsequent jobs in your job stream. (10.1), as Marco just mentioned in his presentation, his earlier presentation, allows you to perform workstation to workstation file transfers. This again is a welcome addition. A lot of customers may have some sort of file transfer or some IWS agent sitting in the DMZ, for example, and they need to transfer that file to the internal network. So having the ability to do that using a workstation to workstation transfer is very, very welcome indeed. Another option, as again Marco mentioned in his earlier presentation, is the ability to have file proxies defined on systems that are not necessarily IWS agents installed, that are standalone, that allow you to provide high availability capability and also to offload that processing network and resource processing from your MDM onto a separate system should your MDM be overloaded or be running at a reasonably high utilization already. So very quickly, I shall just give you a quick demo of the setup of these jobs. They are fairly straightforward. Just share my my test system. If I can find it, that is. Where has it gone? Okay, hopefully you can all see and read this or see this screen. This is a 10.1 test system. It's running everything containerized under Docker. And I use it quite a lot for various demos and things, and so far it's proved to be quite useful. So first of all, looking at the job definitions, they are relatively straightforward. I've got a couple here, one that does a name transfer and one that does a more generic transfer. The first part of the definition is similar: general info, job names, etc., which you're sure you're all already familiar with. So here is the definition of the connection properties. So in here, one of the questions I've been asked a lot when I've been talking about the file transfer is what are the protocols that are supported? And whilst it supports the major file transfer protocols, it doesn't support every specific option available, but it does support the main ones. FTP, of course, which very few people use these days. Secure or FTP over TLS with implicit connection or explicit connection. The two options there, FTP and FTPS. It also supports SSH, so secure copy effectively over SSH, and also supports Windows SMB protocol, which again is very useful in environments where you don't necessarily have SSH available across the whole estate. There is an additional option here, which is auto, which essentially says that it will try to use SSH. It will try to use Windows protocol, SMB, initially, and if it fails, it will then try to use SSH, and if that fails, it gives up. But it allows you to actually transfer without having to know whether you're actually dealing with a Windows or a Unix, Linux type system. However, I have noticed there's quite a delay when you use auto. So my recommendation would be to use either a specific FTP protocol or the appropriate protocol for the type of server that you're trying to connect to. After that, you've got your usual credential specification. You can use key stores instead of users and passwords, of course. and you have your option to test that everything's been set up correctly. And the interesting thing about this as well is it does validate the protocol as well. So if you haven't got your servers set up correctly, you'll get errors already at this stage, which allows you a chance to rectify it before you go any further. The next section, the action, is where you decide or you define what's going to happen. Are you actually receiving files or are you sending files? Credentials, and again, different options for how to specify the credentials as a local user using variables, etc. The standard capabilities you have in most other job types. And new in 9.5 and 10, well, I think it was 9.5 that have introduced it initially, you can now search for files on the remote system, which is something you couldn't do before. And then here you can specify multiple files, add additional files, etc., and your destination path. Additional functionality, which again was missing in the initial support, and yeah, I'm glad to see it here now, is post action or post transfer actions. So you can now delete files, move files, rename in destination folders, etc. And all of that is a great addition because it removes that need to have to script for these standard type functions that you would normally carry out, having received files from a third party, for example. Additional transfer options here is where we can control whether files need to be replaced, whether they need to be appended, renamed, skipped, or whether you just want to raise an error. Transfer modes, binary or text, how long you're prepared to wait for different file timeouts, etc. And the maximum number of simultaneous transfers. This is one I found particularly useful when I'm trying to do demos because you don't particularly want all the files to transfer in one go. But obviously, if you're on a system that's got some sort of resource constraint, then having that ability is also a very useful option. And then finally, FTP options, whether you want to have a passive or active connection. So as you can see from this, it's fairly simple to actually define. You've got all the basic options that you need in there to deal with the majority of file transfers that most customers are likely to require. Just quickly before we go, have a quick look at the workstation to workstation. Here it's actually simpler. You can pretty much just define the workstation, search and choose an agent. Again, supply credentials for that particular agent. So you just put in a basic user example, and again the ability to test the connection, make sure there's no firewalls in between the agents, etc., that are going to cause problems, and it will check that it can actually connect to that agent in order to do a successful transfer. Oh, there we are, workstation to workstation. So that's a very quick, very brief overview of how you define the jobs. Maybe a quick look at this second job. The only difference really in this one is that here, all right, here I've actually specified some generic patterns. So just using regular expressions, files beginning with A, B, C, etc., just so I could generate a job that had a lot more transfers, and hopefully I can capture it before my demo completes. So moving on from the definition side, once your plan's been built, you can, as I say, you need to download and install this file transfer dashboard from the Automation Hub. It's a very simple option. You just have to download the file from the Automation Hub and then import the bookmarks. And when you import it, it'll appear here as the file transfer dashboard KPIs. In my test system, as you can see, I don't have a great deal going on at the moment. I've held most things so that my performance won't be affected too much. But here you can actually click on the chart, for example, and it will drill down and automatically filter on those jobs, those file transfer jobs that meet that particular criteria or that particular status. If we go to some monitored jobs, I've already filtered this on the file transfer jobs. And we can see here, it's not always obvious, but in the job type column, there's actually a new clickable option in job type. And you need to click on this workflow details link. The moment, because the file hasn't started, the transfer hasn't started, there's nothing to be shown. So let me just get this one running. And hopefully, I'll just change the other one while I'm here. That one can start up as well in the background once it finishes. So hopefully now this first job is running. We can now click on this workflow details, which allows us to drill down. Oh, finished already. Which allows us to drill down and see what's happening with the individual file transfers within that job. I'll just stop the automatic refresh for a moment. So here I can restart by clicking on Restart All. I can restart all the file transfers again, just so hopefully you'll see that it was actually doing a file transfer. So we can see here. So then you can select a particular transfer and look at the details of that particular transfer. So here you can see I'm using FTP explicit over TLS. Tells me which server, where the file's going to, etc. I'm probably too late now, but you can stop a particular file transfer, although I suspect it's probably finished by now. Let me just refresh, which it has. So if I want to see what's happened, I can click here on the job log, and it will take me directly to the job log where I can see each individual transfer that's happened, and obviously look for any errors or anything along those lines. So as I mentioned earlier, it's probably not the all singing, all dancing FTP file transfer solution that has all the bells and whistles that a third-party option has, but it certainly gives you enough of the controls that you can manage your file transfers with relative ease. And as I mentioned earlier, all from the same console, which I think is something that is possibly underrated by some of the people who've reviewed these options. My second job has finished as well. That was meant to end in error. So as they say, these demos never work the way you want them to. Not quite sure why it did work successfully. So here I shall just restart all of these because I wanted to at least give you a demo of the file transfers running in parallel. And here you can see that I only have 3 transfers, despite the number of files that are actually being transferred. It'll only ever run 3 in parallel as I set the limit to 3. So again, just proving that throttling mechanism and that capability allows you to do it. And it does actually work. And as you can see, that is almost finished. Unfortunately, my system's performing far better than I expected it to, and so these transfers have run in record time. And if I go back now to my dashboard, see the dashboard has been updated. You can see that the successful file transfers have worked successfully. Another option you have here is this ability to get alerts about file transfers. So as the status changes, it can update here. This is an option that you can switch on or switch off. as you wish. So I'm not quite sure why my file transfers completed quite so quickly as they did, but unless there's any questions, it looks like we may be able to finish a little bit earlier than planned.
Hiya Pete, it's Claire here. We've got one question on chat from Dean Watson.
Okay.
So he said, what challenges have you seen when setting up MFT jobs, and have you attempted to use the Axway plugin? And then he said, we're facing issues with connection test in all aspects of setup and use, except for Windows SMB, which works fine.
I'm not aware of any specific problems. Is it possible to give a bit more detail of what issues they're encountering?
Yeah. So basically, I've got a test environment, so I'm desperate to use this for all the reasons you've just explained.
Mm-hmm.
All the other protocols fail to work under Test Connect. When you hit the button, you hit the Test Connect, and I'm getting various errors.
You mean the FTP over TLS?
SSH, etc. Yeah, the only one that works without issue is the Windows. So I've attempted connection tests between two Windows servers for FTP, FTPS. They don't work. They just can't get them to work correctly. And the SSH, again, same problem, but the SSH I'm attempting to connect to a Linux box. Using standard ports, I believe, and yet I'm not getting anywhere, and I have had those ports checked as well.
Right. Okay. One of the issues that I have found in the earlier versions of the file transfer support, again, particularly using SSH, was that I manually connect with SSH at least once, so that I get the signature for that system recorded prior to trying to use it from IWS. I don't know if that could possibly be the issue.
Okay, that's the sort of thing I've seen with the FTP client that we're actually trying to replace with this technology. So yeah.
So I think that's the first thing I would check. As far as the issues with using FTP over TLS, the problems I've encountered, in fact, when I was setting up this demo, when I originally ran these demos for customers, I only used FTP because I couldn't get the secure FTP working. But as you can see here, I've actually got it working now with FTP. Explicit. I've used explicit here mainly because from what I've read, implicit FTP over TLS with implicit is being deprecated. So they recommend that you use explicit. And here you can see I've actually got explicit working. Now I had problems with certificates initially. I couldn't get my SSL or my TLS part to work because of a certificate issue. And what I found there was with Red Hat Linux, I had to import the public certificate, and I don't remember where I had to import it to. Somewhere in ETC. I can find the path out for you if that will help.
Yeah, give me a pointer. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can have a look back through my notes and find the path. I'm not a Linux specialist, so it was something I had to dig through, and I don't remember the exact path, but I will certainly try and dig that out for you and put it in the chat. And once I'd done that, my connectivity worked after that. So it could possibly be something along those lines. And that will depend upon what your FTP server at the other end is doing.
Okay, cool. Super. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, hope that helps.
Follow-on question. So the agent-to-agent scenario.
Yes.
Okay, two questions. Do you know whether you can use that option with a 9.5 master if the agents are both at 10?
I don't believe so, but maybe someone else on the call, like
No.
Marco or someone.
No, you cannot.
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't.
okay,
You must
that's
have
fair enough.
agent and master from 10 release upwards.
All right, fair enough. And I just
Okay.
wondered what port range does the agent to agent use?
The minimum version is the 10 release from the GA.
Yeah. What
To use
ports
agent
does
to
it
agent
use to
for
communicate?
master and agents.
On mute again.
Yeah. So
Do you hear me?
Davide, can you
Yeah.
hear me? Yeah. I just wondered what ports does the agent to agent transfer?
The ports. Sorry. The ports is the same of the agent. So it's already opened because the agent already communicates with the master. So it currently the agent to agent protocols is using the same communication that is already established between the agents and the master. So it's totally transparent to your firewall.
Okay, so for okay.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So I've got one question.
are there any other questions?
Legacy data file transfer dependencies, right? And cost dependencies.
Sorry, is someone asking a question? I can't hear the question if they are.
With workstation to workstation relationship, is the file transfer function, is there any way we can manage file transfer relationship? IWS
No,
separated.
they are separated. You can move file between the mainframe and a distributed agent,
Yeah.
but with the file transfer that's currently using with FTP or other protocols. But the agent to agents will not resolve the cost dependency.
Push or receive the location.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
There's no more on chat.
Okay, sounds like we might have time for a cup of tea then.